In 3, 2, 1, go. We are live on episode 14 of the Weekly Take podcast. I'm here with Thomas Lindgren. Give everyone a what's up, Thomas. What's going on?
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. This has been a long thing that we've been trying to do for a long time. This sports podcast, and actually just me and Thomas trying to get together, getting this podcast going for you guys. For the people who listen, I like to have guests on the show to talk about sports. So, Thomas, what should people know about you before we dive right into this? Anywhere they can see you, look you up on Insta, Twitter. What's a good handle for you?
Handles Thomas Lindgren 7 on Insta, Twitter, Snapchat. Go ahead and hit it up. I provide your average hot takes based on not much knowledge, pretty much. I say a lot of shit on here, but not a whole lot to back it up. I played sports a little bit, but I'm no crazy athlete or anything like that, just a huge fan. So take whatever I have to say with a grain of salt. Dom's the expert over here. So
I just have a couple episodes under my belt. That's all I really got. I'm not much of a sports guy either. Played a little bit in high school, but other than that, we're pretty much your average guys. To actually dive right into the first segment of the show, we're going to talk about the wild card weekend and what that was all about. The NFL playoffs were a crazy thing this year, especially in the AFC side of things, and also the NFC side of things. You had a 6 seed beat the Bears. That was a fucking big thing that happened. So, Thomas, what happened in Houston this week with Indianapolis? Just going in there and basically embarrassing the Texans, or was it more of the Texans losing? Like, I know that's a really dumb thing to say. Did the Colts win this, or did the Texans lose it?
That's a good thing that you bring up, actually, because I mean, obviously there's a little bit of both, but I really feel like the Texans lost this game. Indy is way more legit this year than I think anybody thought, and Andrew Luck's playing at a ridiculous level, which is cool to see. But the Texans had all the pieces to make a run, and I think that they'd won 9 straight at one point in the season, and I think they just weren't motivated enough, and they have tons of superstars on that defense, and I think that defense didn't come through for them when they needed to. The D-line wasn't quite getting to Luck, and again, that's testament to the Colts, the revamped O-line, which is ridiculous, and again, Andrew Luck's playing at that level, so it's a little bit of both, but I do think that the Texans could have played a lot better up to their talent level. So
yeah, that's what I kind of put down here on the paper, was that the O-line in the Colts is actually pretty legit. That new Nelson guy they have on the guard spot was actually keeping Jadeveon pretty quiet. Obviously Jadeveon, Merciless, and Watt are going to get their they're going to get their share of big plays, but they limited it pretty fucking well.
They did.
Looking back into that, going into Andrew Luck, is Andrew Luck has he locked up? I know it's postseason and this doesn't technically count, but did he lock up comeback player of the year this year against J.J. Watt, would you say?
Well, it's funny because the two leading candidates, I think, at least for me, I think they are for most people too, were playing in this wild card game, J.J. Watt and Andrew Luck. If it's not one of those two guys, I don't know who it's going to be, but I think he did. I think he solidified it. It's a regular season award, so I mean the playoff performance isn't going to be a huge thing, but just the way that he played. I mean, when he had those shoulder problems, I mean, I was hearing he may never throw a football again, and he came back and he balled. So I think it's probably his award right now. But J.J. Watt, I mean, obviously a great player as well, so both worthy of consideration.
Yeah, the thing is with J.J. Watt is he's a super cool guy. He has the Walter Payton badge on his jersey and everything like that. But, looking into this, obviously in the playoffs, it can happen, divisional opponents playing each other. Did that play in Indy's favor? Because, the home field advantage for Houston was probably a huge thing where they kind of looked off the Colts, but little did they, they knew, obviously, but Indy's been there twice a year. T.Y. Hilton even kind of said this is like his second home. Was the home field advantage really a big thing? That's what I was kind of looking at today when I was looking up at these games.
Yeah, it's different for every team, right? I mean, obviously teams like Seattle and New Orleans have home field advantage that's maybe a little bit stronger than every other team. I don't necessarily think that, I mean, obviously both teams were familiar with each other. And so I don't think that it would necessarily help one side or the other.
To kind of wrap this game up, like I said, Watt and all those guys were pretty quiet. They made some big plays. But is this Colts O-line the new, like, Dallas O-line of, like, this year? Would you say 2019, 2020, they're going to be – is Marlon Mack going to be putting up numbers like Le'Veon or like Zeke did just because of that line? Or do you think it's really because they're just – it's Marlon Mack? I got to say it's the line to me.
Yeah, I mean, potentially. They're definitely the most improved O-line over last year. I know the Seahawks O-line was also pretty improved, but Nelson's just a beast, and we knew that coming out of college that he was going to be good. But I mean, I don't think anybody expected him to be, essentially the best player at his position, which is what he's been. Him and Zach Martin on Dallas are probably the two best guards in the NFL right now, and so I don't know if it's that Dallas O-line from a couple years ago, because those guys are pretty legit. I mean, we're talking 4 Pro Bowlers or more.
DeMarco Murray led
DeMarco Murray, exactly.
He led the league in rushing because of those guys.
Yeah, and so we'll see. I think next year if Marlon Mack or whoever gets plugged in there, maybe Le'Veon Bell gets plugged in there.
Very well could go there.
Then, and they put up 1,400 yards from scrimmage, it's going to be hard to say that they're not. So to wrap up this game, Indy at Houston, Indy basically just blew out Houston. That 7 points they had could have even went the other way with that fumble. Mm-hmm.
Actually, so it could the refs, I feel like, kind of gave them that. The refs were not helping out Houston even in their home field, but Indy wins this one 21-7 in Houston. Houston's out of the playoffs, and Indy's now going into Kansas City next week, and we'll get to that game here soon. But to go into the next game that was on Saturday, we have Seattle at Dallas. Seattle falls short to Dallas by 2 points in Dallas. Was this the first time the rushing attack is to blame in Seattle for, since the beginning of the year, roughly?
I have to kind of control myself.
That's
here
fine,
because
you get a little,
obviously it's my home team, so still kind of calming down from this game. But I think if you are going to credit the rushing attack for all of the wins that Seattle has had this year, which is what often happens, if you look at Seattle sports media, even NFL sports media, they're going to say, well, Seattle won by going back to what they know, playing tough defense and running the ball. So there you go. They're crediting the run game for the wins.
Yep.
Then you should that's a double-edged sword. You should also have to credit the rushing attack for the loss in this one. And in the same way that certain teams will only throw the ball even if it's not working, Seattle was only running the ball and it wasn't working. And when you have a quarterback like Russell Wilson back there,
you might want to get a little closer there, bud.
When you have it will. So when you have quarterback like Russell Wilson and you don't use him, then what's the point? You're paying him all this money. He's your franchise player, and you're not letting him do his thing. And so it's a little bit frustrating, especially because while the offensive line has improved, and I think Chris Carson is a very respectable running back, it's not like, this is a top 3 O-line, and it's not like Chris Carson is a top 10 back. So anyway, it is a little bit frustrating, but
that's the thing with, actually talking to one of our other buddies, we talked about kind of the quarterback share, like, to drop names, I'm going to say Baker Mayfield because, Baker Mayfield was, I hate to bring it to Cleveland in the playoffs, but, he's the reason that they won, and he's the reason they did this, and he's this. But as soon as that goes wrong, everyone doesn't want to blame that guy. And I feel like that's kind of the case for this. It's like nobody really wanted to blame the rushing attack, but they love praising it. It's kind of that double-edged sword thing. I looked at this game and I looked at Seattle was playing a pretty good defense in their home. Dak was playing a pretty good game. But does Seattle need more receivers over there? Is that what do you pinpoint as the problem more for, or what do you pinpoint for Seattle to do this year in the draft to really fix them a little bit more? Because they technically they weren't supposed to be in Dallas.
Right.
In the beginning of the year we're like, okay, let's chalk it up kind of thing.
Rebuilding year.
Yeah, but that did not happen. And when Russell Wilson, did his thing.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned the draft because for me, there's two things for me that I think Seattle takes away from this game and the season in general. And number one is the play calling has to get better. And whether that means a coaching change, whether that means you fire Schottenheimer, I don't know what that looks like. Because
you keep Pete?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
You keep Pete. And Pete has been very loyal to his assistant coaches, which is why I don't see them letting go of Schottenheimer even in the next couple of years. But that being said, again, he has to learn from this type of game. The Dallas front seven is dominant, and when you're not getting anything going on the ground, you can't just commit to that, and otherwise this is what's going to happen. And you could argue for drafting receivers. I would have liked the Seahawks to draft a big receiver for the last 5 years, probably. But I think
Rashad Penny wasn't.
slam dunk, first round pick.
4 carries for 29 yards.
Yeah, he was gone in that game too. Needed to get him more involved. But I think with Russ back there, I don't think you need more receivers. I think that dude's going to ball with whatever weapons he has. And so, yeah, I think that's where the Seahawks are at. The other thing that I was going to mention was just the kicking game's been a problem for Seattle for 5 years. And ever since Stephen Hauschka left, the Seahawks have had issues with the leading scorer on your football team, and it's gotten to a point where it is no longer acceptable. So Janikowski's not the long-term answer. We got Dixon in the 5th round. Let's find a kicker.
Yeah, Janikowski, he looks like he's really cramping up there. He's getting pretty old. This guy can't even, make a couple kicks in a game after hours of stretching. He's getting old. To move to the Dallas side of things, as much as you want to talk about that, are the Cowboys going to go one and done? Is this, good job, Dak and Zeke. You guys did it. Is there any chance, what is the chance you say they go into LA and win?
It's hard to say in the NFL these days, and we were talking about home field advantages earlier, and I think that LA may have one of the weaker home field advantages. Yes. Not to say that it doesn't exist, because it does, but I think it's only been a couple years since they were back to LA, and so it's not like going into Oakland, or Seattle or something like that. So I think the Cowboys may have better chances than people think.
Yes.
And that kind of leads into, also what we're going to talk about kind of is the defense of Dallas is so that front seven is so dominant.
Oh,
and, it's one of the reasons that I thought the Bears were going to go a lot farther than they did, is because just playoff time, when it comes down to it, if you have a stout front seven and you have a really good defense, it can take you places. And, Dak Prescott and Zeke Elliott are superstars, and they're doing, all that they can. But I wouldn't give most of the credit to them. I'd give most of the credit to that defense, DeMarcus Lawrence and Van Der Esch and those guys.
Jalen Smith.
Right.
I know you're a big Earl Thomas guy, and that's why I bring this up. With Earl Thomas there, obviously Amari Cooper wouldn't be there. We'd be having a whole different conversation. But if he was there, imagine how much better that defense would already be with it being how it is. I look at that front seven, like you just said, and that's one of the best front sevens in the league. And then to add someone like that would have been even crazier. But to go into the next part, who deserves majority of the praise of this Dallas Cowboys? Is it Ezekiel Elliott? Is it Dak? And I know we just hyped up the defense. Is it the defense?
Yeah, it's the defense. And again, Zeke's great, and Dak's making enough plays to keep him in the game, but it's the defense. That was the biggest thing, I think, for Dallas this year. their sort of comeback to becoming relevant again in playoff football and that kind of a thing is their defense is just really good, and we'll see how long that lasts, because DeMarcus Lawrence may walk, and that's going to be big. So
yeah, so to wrap this one up, Seattle couldn't come through and pull off the upset in Dallas. I think actually Seattle was favored, to be honest with you, but they end up losing by 2 points in Dallas for you guys who are just now turning it on. Moving into the next game, Sunday, Baltimore Ravens fall short to the LA Chargers by 6 points in Baltimore. Baltimore has a very good home field advantage, but let me ask you this. You know, with Baltimore being one of the tougher defenses in the AFC right now, because Houston is now out, was this the biggest competition defensively Phillip Rivers is going to have to go against? Because I know Tom Brady has a really good, they have a good zone hybrid defense over in New England and Foxborough, and they're a different team there. But was this the toughest defense that, LA is going to face? Is that a good thing for them to take Baltimore down?
Absolutely. Yeah, that Baltimore defense is absolutely the toughest defense that they're going to face in the playoffs. And I think that, in my opinion, the LA Chargers have the strongest defense in the AFC.
Yeah.
I think the Ravens defense was
the Rams are in the NFC.
The Chargers.
The
LA Chargers.
Sorry.
I should say. No, you're
they're
fine.
2 LA teams. So I got all mixed up.
Well, yeah, nobody wants them in LA anyway. Nobody wants the Chargers.
We need
there.
another team in LA, actually.
3. Let's move the Seahawks.
Sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. Yeah, I think that the LA Chargers have the best defense in the AFC. The Ravens, I think, is the most well-coached defense, and year after year they prove that. But I think that the Chargers just have the most playmakers. And I think that's going to take them really far. I don't think that New England's going to pose that much of a threat defensively to Phillip Rivers. He's been around the block a few times, and I think he's going to be fine.
Yeah, you say these playmakers on LA, I almost said San Diego. Melvin Gordon was, he's a big key of that offense, Keenan Allen too. But where do you rank this guy among the NFL's running backs? Because, you got your Camaras, you got your Elliott's, you got your Barkleys, you got your Bells and David Johnsons. Where's Melvin Gordon? Is he like lower upper tier or like higher middle tier?
That's interesting, and been talking about this before, because I think he is a super underrated back, and he definitely belongs in the top tier. It would be hard to say, among the top 5 or 6 running backs, the exact ranking there, but I think he definitely belongs in the top tier with Gurley and Elliott and all those guys. He had that, the first year he was in the league, he didn't score any touchdowns. He had a down year, but then the second year he just absolutely took off, and the dude's nuts with the football in his hand. He's got a little bit of power. He can outrun just about anybody, and he's pretty shifty. So,
how similar of a build is he to Gurley? Like, are they around the same size?
Pretty close, yeah.
I'm guessing Gurley's a bit bigger.
He's a little bit bigger, and he's a little bit taller, but I think that Gordon may be a little bit shiftier. So
yeah, that's for sure. I looked at this game, and, as a Ravens fan, I look at it and say, this is possibly Joe Flacco's last game in purple. I looked at the stats, and I know we were saying this during the game, put Flacco in. But Flacco's last playoff game wasn't pretty either. I'm glad Lamar got some touches out there on that last drive. I'm excited to see Lamar, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people in the NFL are, because it's a lot more interesting to watch that type of football. So moving into that, Baltimore is missing a lot of things offensively, and that starts at the wide receiver position. With getting some more key players, like if, obviously any team would like to get a Julio Jones, an Odell, or an Antonio Brown. But actually, I don't know if anyone really wanted Antonio Brown drama, but you know what I mean? Like, they're missing those big pieces on offense, and I think, they get a couple big players in this draft, it could work out. But this game just did not work out in their favor. Lamar showed some definite butterfingers. What did you take away from this game just watching the game?
Well, I think kind of going back, I think the Chargers are a lot better than people are giving them credit for. And, because they're a wild card team and they're just in a stacked division. But I think that they definitely have the potential to win it all. And for Baltimore, with Lamar, you're going to have the growing pains, 6 months ago, people were billing him as he should switch to wide receiver. Exactly. And, he came in and went, 6-1 as a starter?
Yeah, and he almost took down Kansas
Something
City.
like that. Exactly. And so if you're a Ravens fan, that's exciting.
Yes.
And, but, like you said, they're missing some pieces, and we all maybe thought that Alex Collins was going to be the guy this year for the Ravens, and maybe that's not working out. And I know we've been saying for years that the Ravens need to draft a big receiver, and they've tried, and it hasn't worked out too well, Brashad Perriman. And so, you like the Ravens to go after, again, somebody to surround Lamar with, because I think you've seen plenty from him. And, he had a tough playoff game, but that's what rookies do. So I think you surround him with some pieces, and the Ravens are going to be pretty dangerous.
So me being, I'm going to ask you this personally. Who do you think in this draft, because we'll get to the draft here soon, but who's a big receiver just for any team to pick up? Is there any Odells this year? Is there any big guys that really stand out?
It's hard to say right now, and we still got some guys who could declare. Overall, it's a pretty weak receiver class, but there are definitely a couple of guys to keep your eyes on, and there's one guy in particular I think the Ravens should target, and we'll talk about him later.
Cool. Yeah, we'll definitely get to that. So to wrap this game up, Baltimore falls short by 6 points in Baltimore. Lamar Jackson couldn't get that first rookie playoff win at home in front of the Ravens fans. Phillip Rivers did his job and did his part. Now they're moving on to Foxborough next Saturday, I believe that game is. Let me actually look that up for you guys, everyone who's just watching. But I don't remember that. But they are playing this weekend in the divisional round. To wrap up the last week of the wild card playoffs, we had Philadelphia upsetting Chicago at home, 16-15. What's going on in Philly with these quarterbacks? Is Nick Foles one of the greatest postseason quarterbacks of all time, or is this just, are you with it or quit it kind of thing? Like, are you with it or not with it?
It's tough because, just wins and losses, which is all that really matters. Absolutely, he's one of the best playoff quarterbacks of all time already. And when you watch him play, you can sort of, just feel confidence coming from this guy, and it's super cool to see. Obviously, it puts Philadelphia in a tricky situation, but I think it's funny because it was almost like in our inner circle among our friends and everything else, we all kind of assumed that the Eagles were going to do this. It's like, the game was really close, obviously, and it could have gone either way, and Chicago's a great football team, but we all just kind of figured that Philly was going to do this again, and again, long way to go to replicate what they did last year, but it, cool to see, absolutely, especially going against the NFL's #1 defense, and so... yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, I look at this and we've said this in our circle. I think I said it last podcast too, that management is like, what the hell do we do with these quarterbacks? You got one who's injured and you got one guy who's done everything they've told him to do. Although that is the backup quarterback's job to go in there and, fill in the role. But Trubisky did his part. The defense did their part, but they're on the field a lot. Khalil Mack and that goal line stand, that fourth down, that was crazy. They held them all the way to fourth down, and they finally got it in. As an NFL team, if you got 4 chances to get, 2 yards, I think, you should be able to get it percentage-wise. I just think the defense kind of fell a little bit short, sadly. To talk about the elephant in the room, though, God, sorry, I had a burp there. Do kickers deserve as much as a blame as people give them? That he made the first one before they called the timeout. Maybe he really did get iced, but how much of the blame is on the kicker of this game?
So you're talking with our Eagles fan friend about this also recently, and it's really tough because, and I think Bruce Irvin tweeted something either recently or when some other kicker missed a kick, and he said, "Well, you got one job." Yeah, and he's right.
So does Bruce Irvin, though.
So does Bruce Irvin. Well, and there's a difference is that, everybody's watching the kicker do his job. When Bruce Irvin misses a tackle, some people might catch it and say, "Oh, Bruce Irvin missed a tackle there," but it's not a game losing. It could be a game losing play, but again, he is on the field so often, and so in one way, Cody Parkey, he did his best, and it was a fine kick, got tipped, but his one job is to make that field goal, win the game for him. So it's tough, and I think he's been under a ton of scrutiny, and I think he's handled it like a champ, which is really cool to see. Yes, because that's a shitstorm that I don't wish upon anybody. No. So, and he handled it like a champ. So,
I remember you saying, we talked right after this happened, you said, Chicago could have very well went on and won, at least gone to the NFC Championship or even the Super Bowl with this team.
Yeah,
Trubisky did his part, and what's, I don't even know where I'm going with this question, but what is it about Chicago that said they can make this Super Bowl to you?
Same thing that I was talking about Dallas earlier, just defense. And as good as Dallas was, Chicago was better. And, and I really think that it was Trubisky and the offense holding them back. And that's something that Matt Nagy and the Bears got to figure out, because Matt Nagy's an offensive coach. He's an Andy Reid guy, and the offense wasn't good enough this year. Give Trubisky, a little extra time, or complete a few more plays, and all of a sudden these guys are in the Super Bowl. So and like you said, the Chicago defense was on the field too much, because Trubisky and the offense couldn't convert. And so give Trubisky time to develop and work with his receivers and everything, and I think they're gonna be good for a long time. So
that's a really underrated thing in the NFL. Like, a lot of people like to point, they gotta Odell's got to win his matchup. The defense has to get to him on that. But what the biggest thing is getting your fucking defense getting their offense off the field. And, these third down conversions add up. If someone gets 12 first down conversions on third down, that kind of beats you mentally. In intramural footballs, or even in any football you play with our friends, someone gets a third down, you're like, fuck, now we got to restart. And I'm guessing at that level, it's even worse. So Chicago's probably really kicking themselves in the ass for letting Philly come into the playoffs, by by beating Minnesota. I bet you they would have rather play Minnesota and Kirk Cousins. And, Chicago falls short by 1 point, sadly, due to a missed kick at home in front of their fans. A lot of people said they could have very well went to the Super Bowl that year. So Philly wins this one 16-15. Moving into the second actual segment of the show, we're going to be talking about the NFL divisional round and what is going to happen, and what we think and who we're going to pick. So, Thomas, who do you got this week on Saturday? Indianapolis at Kansas City.
This is going to be a great game, and I think a lot of these games are going to be really good. And, Indy is on a hot streak for sure. So it's going to be tough to pick against KC, just because they've been so good this year, and I think the defense is starting to put it together. They started to put it together at the end of the year, and with Eric Berry being back, and so they're gonna do their best. But with the way that Luck's playing, he's really good, and I think he doesn't have a ton more playoff experience than Mahomes, but he does have more experience overall, and I think that's going to be the difference in this one. I think that as good as Mahomes is going to be and is right now, playoffs are just a completely different animal. And you saw that with Trubisky, and you saw that with Lamar Jackson. And so I think that he is going to make a few mistakes, and that's going to be the difference in this one. I'm going with Indy.
You're going Indy this game. Wow, that's actually really cool to see. I'm actually going to have to go Kansas City as much as I don't want to. Pat Mahomes is a pretty dangerous person. As well as anyone, you went to the game in Seattle and witnessed this guy first person. He's one of those guys that he's just really slippery to get to. In general, I would, to back up your Indy, let me tell you why Indy can win this game, just like you said. If their O-line puts up just a smidge of how they played against Houston, they're going to be fine. That Kansas City line is probably one of the better lines with that defensive front, but it's not as good as Houston's defensive front. So if they can block Jadeveon Clowney, Whitney Merciless, and J.J. Watt, I'm pretty sure they can block Derek Johnson and friends.
Yep.
You know, so I
Chris,
think
Chris Jones,
Yeah.
had a bunch of sacks, but
you know, like I really do think it could be a very close game, and playoffs are a very different animal. Kansas City has not won a playoff game since Alex Smith was starting over there with Spencer Ware.
yeah. Well, that's the thing right there. Is
You
just
know.
the history for KC
Yes.
isn't there, and as great of a coach as Andy Reid is, the playoff wins just haven't been coming for
No.
KC. So until they do, it's hard to pick.
When the lights shine bright on Andy Reid, it just does not come through. You know, this Kansas City obviously is one of the better home field advantages with their fans and their fried mayonnaise balls and all their loud, obnoxious chants. I think the key to slowing down Pat Mahomes is probably blitzing him. I just really think if Indy can get to him, which I think they can. Darius Leonard's leading this, that front seven into doing a lot of great things. So I'm going to go Kansas City, but I very well think Indy could win this. I know that's kind of a half-ass pick, but Kansas City, I think, will end up pulling this out. Is there anything else you have to say about this game that really stood out to you?
No, not much. I think it's going to be a good one. Like I said, I think Indy's a lot better than people thought they were going to be, and so this could have been, the recipe for a blowout. But I think it's going to be a good game.
Yeah, I think this is this probably was on it. This is going to be a better game than if Houston would have won, to be honest with you. Moving into the next game, we got Dallas at the Rams. Can Dallas stop Todd Gurley? That's the biggest question for me going into this one.
Yeah, it's Gurley's he's the guy, and they can. I think they can. They're like we were talking about, that front seven is just nasty, and so if anybody's going to be able to do it, it's DeMarcus Lawrence and company. And but at the same time, we know that LA has more weapons than just Gurley, and if Gurley's not working, then
Woods.
You bet Goff's going to throw it, and when those guys take to the air, crazy shit can happen. So it's another good one, and I want to say that it's going to be low scoring, but I don't think it is. I think
shootout.
Yeah, really, because the Rams defense is shown to be vulnerable at times, especially to the pass, and so the Dallas defensive, or the offensive line, I should say, not as good as it's been in years past, but it's still a pretty formidable offensive line, and so I think they're going to give Dak some time to do his thing, and I think it's going to be a shootout. That being said, LA just has too many playmakers. They just got too many superstars on the ball, and that's their strategy to get to the Super Bowl this year. And I think it's going to put them 1 week closer. So I'm going with the Rams in this one. Yeah,
they're running the midlife crisis, buying all these players to really get that Super Bowl. Actually, I'm gonna have to go Dallas, just to kind of keep it interesting. But the reason I think if Dak plays just like he did, they're a tough team to beat. Ezekiel Elliott, the thing is about this game, I fully agree with the shootout, because it's going to come down to the quarterbacks. Zeke's going to do his part. Gurley's going to do his part. Who do you trust more, Jared Goff or Dak? And I would honestly probably trust Dak a little bit more with that line, and I think Zeke will make some plays. But I also do think Goff will throw over this defense. Sean McVay is a pretty creative play caller. If you were Jason Garrett, what would be one thing you would, that you want to stop the most? Is it Gurley? Is it Goff? Or do you just, I don't really know what to say. What's your biggest thing if you were Jason Garrett this week?
Kind of a vanilla answer, but just get to Jared Goff.
Yeah.
Just put the pressure on him, because as good as he's been, this is true for every quarterback. He's just not very good under pressure. And the issues that he had coming out of Cal, his rookie year when he was taken number 1 overall, that was the thing, is, as soon as there's pressure against the blitz, Goff is just not very good. So, which is, and that's what Dallas thrives. They thrive at, sending guys after him. So, it's going to be interesting. And I think if the Rams can hold those guys off, then it's going to be a long day for Jason Garrett.
Yeah, Jason Garrett, yeah, he's one of those guys who's going to try to make some creative play calls, but sometimes that doesn't go well. So that about does it for Dallas at the Rams. Moving into the Sunday games, we got the Chargers at New England. With the Chargers taking down the Ravens defense, we just talked about how good the Ravens defense was and how good the defenses are. Actually, 3 good defenses, went the other way. Chicago, Baltimore, Houston are now out of the playoffs. Even Seattle even had a pretty good defense in the retrospect of things. But is this New England's last year of being unstoppable? Like, I look at this year in 2019 and say, Foxborough isn't that scary as it once was. You know what I mean?
It's true. Yeah. I don't think this is the last year New England's going to be really good. Mm-hmm. I think as long as Belichick's there, they're going to be a good football team. They're going to be a tough out, and they're always going to be a tough out. That being said, and this is my hot take for the NFL divisional round. I've obviously talked up the Chargers so far on this show today, and I'm going to talk them up a little bit more. I'm saying the LA Chargers are not only going to beat the New England Patriots in Foxborough this weekend and send themselves to the AFC Championship game, but the LA Chargers are going to blow New England out of the water and send waves throughout the AFC, I should say. I'm telling you, it's going to be questions about, is Brady done?
Wow.
Is the reign over? I'm telling you, because the New England has been more vulnerable. They've still been good, but they've been more vulnerable this year than any other year. And I think these LA Chargers are hot right now. I think Phillip Rivers is a man on a mission trying to get his first Super Bowl ring, and I think they're going to send waves throughout the NFL this weekend in Foxborough.
I'm going to go with you 100%. I'm riding the Chargers bandwagon right now. I'm the leader. I'm pretty sure you're the leader of the Charger witness fans. People say blind witnesses, but you're not blind. The thing is about that, and the thing that, let me say why this could not happen, and what I'm worried about as a Chargers fan this week, Brady's a better quarterback than Lamar Jackson is, and he's going to make better plays than Lamar Jackson, and he's going to hold the ball, and he's going to know to throw the ball away if he's scrambling on third down and little shit like that. So that's really what I'm worried about. Gronk, I'm not really worried about Gronk. He's a shell of himself. Also in L.A., Hunter Henry just got reactivated. So they don't have to have...
Did he?
Yeah, Old Man Gates doesn't have to...
Stephen A., did you look that one up
that's
before you said
That's a legit stat. The NFL Instagram actually posted that one.
Ladies and gentlemen, on the Weekly Take, we are more informed than Stephen A. Smith.
And we are more informed than Stephen A. Smith. Hunter Henry will be active this game, and that's a big thing for them. Phillip Rivers, my thoughts on him, I've given my thoughts. Obviously during the Ravens game, I don't like him. But let me just say this. He's been living in a shadow his whole career. I said this when we were watching the game. He's had Breeze, Aaron Rodgers, and Brady ahead of him. Even Big Ben is arguably more known than him. And I just think that this is his year to shine. Big Ben's not in the playoffs. Aaron Rodgers is out. And then Brady's the other guy, and then Breeze is in the NFC. So this is his time to really kind of say, hey, I've been playing for fucking 13 years, and I haven't gotten any time to show it. This is my time.
Yeah.
So
I heard it dropped a couple times this season throughout the year that Phillip Rivers may be like one of the most underrated quarterbacks ever.
Yes.
Just with it, all he's been able to do with, the teams that he's had, and, doesn't have a ring, obviously. So, but this could be the year. Yeah.
So to wrap that game up, we both actually have the Chargers for this game going into New England. That's a very big upset to some, but not to us. I feel almost Chargers have the advantage of just a smidge. Moving into the last game of the divisional round, we got Philly going into New Orleans. What does Philly have to do to beat New Orleans this week?
A lot.
It's
the short answer. Everything right, and no mistakes. And Foles has to be playoff Foles again.
Yes.
And it's going to be a lot because the Saints are one of the best at home in the entire league. They have, they like the Chargers probably. They also have a Hall of Fame quarterback back there who's going to take care of business. And I think Philly might catch the Saints off guard, maybe a little bit. Give them a couple drives, and You maybe put up some points, maybe even be leading in the first quarter or something, but there's just too much that's got to happen.
There's a lot.
For
Stars have to
Philadelphia.
align.
Yeah, you're right. And so, the corners are going to have a tough day, and they're running some rookie backup corners back there, and Drew Brees is not Mitchell Trubisky.
No.
So that is where I think you're going to see the biggest difference between the Eagles' performance this week and last week. So as much as I want to pick the Eagles over the Saints, I just can't do it. I'm not at home, so it's going to be New Orleans for me.
Yeah, as much as I want to ride the Philly train all the way to the Super Bowl, I think this is where it's going to come up short. Alshon Jeffrey and Golden Tate could make some plays. I know Lattimore is not really what he was last year. Is he still? I haven't really heard anything. Is he hurt?
I think he's been
just
a
not getting
little bit
to.
banged up. Yeah, and it's kind of a case of
Sherman
and what's his face from the Browns? Denzel Ward. Thank you. Who was balling the first couple games of the season, and then all of a sudden he stopped putting up stats, and everybody's going, well, why is that happening? Well, quarterbacks aren't throwing to him.
Yes.
And I think it's a little bit similar with Lattimore. But in the same vein, I think overall the Saints defense is just really strong, and Eli Apple has been better on the other side, and
former Giant.
They've got a good pass rush. So I think the pressure has been lifted off of Lattimore a little bit, so he hasn't been able to put up the stats, but I think he's been just as good.
I think another big two things I got on this game I wrote down. Philly's linebackers versus Kamara is going to be a huge thing. He's one of those guys. He's a receiver too. You can't really write him off as like a Todd Gurley where he's strict. Well, even Todd Gurley's kind of universal. You can't really talk to him like he's a Zeke where he's just going to run between the tackles kind of guy. These backers are going to have to cover him like a wide receiver. And I honestly think, what is his name? Is it Brooks? Is that there?
The backer?
Yeah, the backer for Philly.
Hicks.
Jordan Hicks, not Brooks.
Yep.
He's gonna have a big day tomorrow.
He's a pretty good player.
And I think if they get some pressure on Drew Brees, it's gonna help. But I just think the Saints aren't invulnerable. Obviously, they showed that against Dallas on Thursday night or a long time ago. But maybe Philly looks at some tapes like that and keeps it a low-scoring game and gets the breeze. But other than that, like you said, it's a pretty stars-aligned type of game for Philly to win this. So I'm going to have to go New Orleans on this one. Is there anything that really sticks up to you about Drew Brees and the banged-up? I know we just said that. What is it? Is Drew Brees going to have? How many touchdowns do you think Drew Brees is having this week?
Man, well,
against the secondary.
Yeah, we were talking about the secondary, and they're not, the strongest right now. I think
they played pretty well last week against Trubisky.
They did play pretty well, and I think, and the Philadelphia Eagles are for sure one of the best coach teams in the league, and that's why they were able to come out with the win.
Yes.
Is that secondary? For maybe lack of talent, they were disciplined and they did their jobs.
Great.
And
They're flying.
They were, and I think they're going to come out fired up against New Orleans too. I think Drew Brees may have to lean on his running backs a little bit more than he'd like to. So I'm just going to go. I'm just going to go 2 touchdown passes.
2 touchdowns
for Drew Brees, and then Ingram and Kamara have 1 each. I'm going to say.
Wow. Yeah, a lot of people like to forget about Mark Ingram is a thing in another thing though for sticking up for New Orleans. Chicago doesn't have a Michael Thomas. And that is a big thing. They have a Robinson. They don't have a Michael Thomas. So moving into the third segment of the show, I want to talk college football with you because I know you're a big college football guy. So what's going on with college football? What stands out to you this year for college football?
First of all, how about them Cougs? Yes, sir. Last AP poll came out this morning, and the old WSU.
They update it after
did.
the championship?
WSU Cougs coming in at number 10.
Wow.
The highest-ranked Pac-12 team in the AP poll this year.
Wow.
So, and that is no small feat. Especially after the tumultuous offseason that the WSU Cougs have had. And the fact that they were able to come back and put up 11 wins in what has been a record year for everybody was just absolutely fantastic to watch. So, that's my little WSU plug I gotta throw in.
Oh,
there
no
first.
worries at all.
But elsewhere, it was kind of the same story in college football this year that it has been for the last couple years. The SEC is as dominant a conference as it's ever been, and yet they got humbled in the national championship
They very
game,
well
which,
did.
I think was probably pretty satisfying to a lot of casual college football fans, because it's just Alabama. And so it was Alabama-Clemson 4 this year, and we all expected a lot closer game than we got.
I expected Alabama to win this game, to be honest with you.
I also expected Alabama to win this game, and the Clemson Tigers proved a lot in this game, and it was cool to see.
So where do you rank this team of all time? Because we talked about this.
Yeah.
You know, Clemson just humbled I'm not going to say NFL defense, but they very well humbled this team. Where do you rank this Clemson offense of at least the past 10 years? You know, this has got to be one of the better offensive teams you've seen in the national championship.
The Clemson?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would go the other direction. I know I'm talking a lot of defense today, but
that's fine.
I would say that Clemson defense has to be considered in the greatest college defense of all time. Alabama's got a couple on there for sure on that list, and I think that with most of Clemson's offensive players coming back for the next year, the next year and then the year after that, they could very well be one of the best offensive teams too. They were just absolutely dominant on the defensive side of the ball. This was the best Alabama offense that probably they've had under the Nick Saban era. And, Tua Tagovailoa is an incredible player, and they absolutely shut him down. They forced him into mistakes. We've talked about it before. The defensive line for Clemson has 3 guys who are first-round NFL draft picks. So, it's not all that surprising then to find out that, they pressured Tagovailoa a ridiculous amount of times, and he finally made a couple mistakes. It's like he'd been just about perfect all year.
Yeah.
And then this Clemson defense came in, and I don't think anybody was just expecting how great they were. But yeah, like we said, they are definitely some of the best that I've seen in college football.
So does Tua's draft stock get hurt after this? Obviously he had a fantastic year in Alabama. He didn't really get to play as much as he probably wanted to, but obviously, like you said, Clemson defense is great. Does this hurt his stock a little bit? Because he's not going to the NFL this year, is he?
No, he's got one more year to play. I don't think it really hurts his stock. I mean, you're talking, this is his worst game of his career, and we're still 22 for 34, 295, 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, and that's his worst game. I mean, sign me up. If you're an NFL team that needs a quarterback, man, you're gonna wait another year. Yeah, heck yeah, you want this guy, and
hell yeah.
And I'm sure there will be questions about his size and everything else, but just look at the film. Just tune into any Alabama game next year or this year, and what he did in the championship last year, and it's just like, this dude very obviously just got it.
Yeah.
So I don't think it hurts his draft stock much.
So, but does it hurt Saban's legacy?
That's an interesting question. And some people will say yes. I don't think so. I don't think it hurts Saban's legacy. This is by far his biggest beatdown of his entire career, which is, what are we talking here? 28 points, 44-16. Yeah. So your worst loss is 28 points, Yeah, I'll take it. No, I don't think it hurts his legacy that much. He is already throwing his hat in the ring for greatest college coach of all time and one of the greatest football coaches of all time. And the dude can be tough on his players, but there's no debating what he's done. And so people will point to this when you talk about Saban's legacy and say, well, this, and this. But I think it's more of a testament to how good Clemson was this
Yeah.
year, because it's not like Alabama's not going to be right back in there next year.
Yeah,
So.
it's gonna be a 5 years war.
Well, and there may not be a more dominant team in any sport at any level right now than Alabama is in college football. You know, you talk about the Warriors and stuff.
You
in
could
the
argue
NBA.
New England,
Sure, yeah, you can argue New England, but we're talking
Spurs.
Maybe the Spurs, but the Alabama's. I wish I had this in front of me, but Alabama's worst finish under Saban, I want to say, is probably 5 or 6. You know, just outside of that national championship.
Wait, ranking
game.
wise?
Probably, yeah,
Jeez.
something close to that. Like I said, I don't have the stat in front of me, but they are considered for the championship just about every single year. So
And they're ranked number 1 almost every year. They were 1 this year, right?
Yeah.
So to kind of branch off from the national championship, you know, as well as anyone, as a football fan, I want to see 8 teams in the playoffs. And like we said when we were watching the national championship, you're like, these 2 coaches don't want that. And yes, it would be like they would be pissed to lose to an 8 seed, because it very well can happen. Like we just said, in the NFL, playoffs are a different animal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you get Ohio State, you know, the 5th ranked spot, and they're going against Alabama. They very well could win. They have the size and everything like that. So what do you want it to be 8 teams? Do you want it to keep it to 4? Do you want it to go even to 6, something even more odd?
Well, and it's funny because people will say that, well, Clemson won, they beat them down. Very obviously, the best team in college football won the national championship this year. There's not a whole lot of debate about that, and I agree. That being said, and not to say that a team like Ohio State would beat this Clemson team, because they wouldn't. However, this is a rare year where there was a team so much more head and shoulders dominant above everybody else, and that they won the thing. That's not necessarily the case. Last year it was close. Georgia's always tangling in there, and four is just, it's too small. It's got to be at least 8, if not 16. 16's kind of unrealistic. So I'll shoot for 8 right now. But there are just teams that deserve a shot. Whether or not they have an actual chance, they deserve a shot. And I don't know why the hell ESPN cares. It would shoot viewership up. They get a whole nother week of college football. They make a whole lot more money. So
it's the whole health thing, I think.
Safety.
And then, so I know you know the conferences, because, you know, in this 4-team format, one of those Power 5 conferences gets left out. So is that one of your arguments for having it? Or is it like a tough luck? Like you
it
should have
is.
a better team?
Well, you know, it's been tough luck for the Pac-12 for the last couple of years, and this isn't to say that the Pac-12 belongs up there, you know, in the discussion of best conferences, because it doesn't. But a couple years ago, it did. Back when Oregon was dominant, and Stanford was good, and the South had a lot of good teams, and there's always going to be a conference out, and there's just not enough cross-conference play in college football to justify leaving out a conference, because you can say all you want, well, the Pac-12 is this much worse than the SEC, but you're playing on the other side of the country. If you don't ever play each other, how are we going to
see who's
good and who stacks up and all that? So it's got to be at least 8. You give every Power 5 conference 1 team in.
Okay.
And then you give 1 team from the group of 5. So that's your UCF. That's your, you know, just give them a chance.
Notre Dame,
right? Your
out of conference teams.
Well, so Notre Dame's an independent, but so then you give the next 2 best a shot in. So whether those 2 are from the SEC, whether they're Notre Dame, whether they're from the Pac, whatever. But that way everybody gets a shot. And nobody can complain that, oh, my conference is better than your conference, because it's a futile gesture, and nothing's gonna happen from that. So
because before the playoffs, it was just the top 2 teams would play each other, right? That's how it would. I mean, look into how the changes even come since then. So we're obviously in the better end of things. You know, it very well could happen, like you said. Who didn't make it this year? Obviously, the Pac didn't. but
Pac-12 didn't make it in. The Big Ten
Big
didn't
Ten.
make it in.
And you said that
so
was what's kind of
it's been kind of fueling it.
Yeah.
At least the Big Ten commissioner and the donors to the Big Ten, we're talking deep pockets, are coming in and saying, well, how come we didn't get a team in? You know, especially after Notre Dame was walloped by Clemson, and then and everybody knew that Ohio State would have put up a better fight, or Michigan or something like that. So
I mean, would they though? Because they just humbled Alabama.
maybe
But
it's
still,
again, it's hard to say
Yeah.
because the conferences don't ever play each other.
Yeah.
So the Big Ten could be, you know, at a way higher level than the SEC. We just would never know. It's likely that it's not.
Who's
But
the one that usually comes out of the Big Ten?
the big guys are Ohio State, in the
Ohio
Big
State.
Ten, Michigan.
Yeah, that was
State.
Harbaugh's in some definite hot seat.
Yeah, he's got to
He's
do
fine,
better.
though. He'll
He's
be
gotta
all
do
right.
better. He will be.
To talk a little bit more about college football, I know you're a big draft guy, and I know there's one job that you hate more than anything in the world, and that is college football or NFL scouts. What's your input
NFL
on
scouts?
Yeah. What's your
Uh,
hot take on these guys?
There's no hot take other than they're all idiots, every single one of them. And I tell you, just about every career choice that you can make.
Dentist.
Right? You want to be a dentist. You want to be a dentist? Okay, you could be a dentist if you want to be. I want to be a veterinarian.
Okay.
Brian wants to own his own business.
Okay. Nate
Or
wants to be
Nate
video.
wants to be video guy, director maybe, right? In all of those professions, you are evaluated
Yes.
based on the work you put forth. Okay?
Okay.
So when you're a dentist, you get feedback. If you cut somebody's mouth when you are not supposed to cut their mouth,
Yeah.
you're going to hear about it. This goes for all
Yeah.
careers. NFL scouts love to essentially do what we're doing right now, make hot takes, about players.
They
and
get
say-
paid to do
They
it.
get paid lots of money to sit here and talk about NFL players and college players. And these are kids, mind
Yes.
you. That the
Younger
NFL
than us.
scouts, we're talking 40, 50-year-old men, some of whom have never played a down of football in their life. Okay, so now you take these guys and they're talking about 19, 20, 21-year-old
Yes.
kids. And they then have the audacity to say, well, so-and-so doesn't have the measurables. And they love that little M word, the M word I call it. Oh, measurables. Okay, let's talk measurables right now. So-and-so is 1 inch shorter than the prototypical quarterback size. We're going to bump him down an
Third round.
entire 2 rounds of the NFL draft. Mind you, these are hundreds of thousands of dollars you're costing these
yes.
players by
Your mouth.
arbitrarily assigning them traits because they are 6'1" instead of 6'2", and measurables. The M word is just part of it. Every time I see a player in the NFL that was evaluated by draft scouts and said, "Nah, this
Baker
player's not going to
Mayfield.
do it." That's an L for NFL scouts. It's an L. It is.
Lamar
Every
Jackson.
time. Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield are just the
Russell
two
Wilson.
most recent examples. Now, the good news is, and I think as this is starting to change, is that the NFL teams are starting to separate themselves from the scouts. The Browns very obviously didn't listen to anything that the scouts had to say on Baker Mayfield, because read up on it, guys. you want to know what they said about Baker Mayfield?
What?
Short. As an attitude problem. That's my favorite thing. I
An
know I'm going
attitude
into
problem.
it here, but okay, so we're talking measurables. Now the 50-year-old men sitting here are evaluating the 19-year-old kids, passionate players, and saying, well, so-and-so's, they're irresponsible. They're not going to make
the
it.
barrel of everything. About
I saw a
players.
tweet the other day, and I can't remember. This is irresponsible of me to not know the source. But anyway, it was a guy who said, he was talking about the Antonio Brown situation.
Oh,
he
yeah.
said, well, scouts saw this, and that's why he dropped to
Wow.
the 6th round. And they knew
Wow.
that he was going to be a handful.
They knew.
And you're seeing it come to fruition now. What an idiot, whoever that guy is. Do you think anybody's going, oh, man, I'm glad I didn't draft him because of his attitude problem? No, nobody said that. So, yes, NFL scouts,
take this
you're
L.
all cocksuckers, all of you, okay? Take this L every time a player does better than you say he's going to, you know? And the problem is they have pull. It's like we just said the NFL teams separate themselves, which is nice, but they have pull. We're talking, you know, rounds that can move up or down all because, you know, I didn't have my favorite chip bag next to me while watching the film of this guy, and so I was grumpy, and his pass blocking sucks.
Boom. You cost this guy hundreds of thousands of dollars on that. So to end college football, there's one more game that I did want to bring up. And, you know, it's actually the 2-year undefeated team, UCF. You know, you have to give these guys some consideration being undefeated.
No,
but,
you don't.
But do you really have to after this loss to LSU, as bad as they lost? Because that was pretty embarrassing.
Well, it's tricky because Mackenzie Milton, who was their Heisman Trophy candidate quarterback before he got hurt, that guy's legit, and he'll be back next year, I hope, and UCF will continue to be good. But at the same time, this was coming for a long time. I'm surprised it didn't come last year. But national champions, they are not. And they can say it all they want, but they lost to LSU, who, I shall remind you, gave up 74 points in a college football game. So,
and they're the what ranked team in the SEC?
LSU?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
What number? Fourth best team in the SEC?
Georgia, Bama, Auburn, maybe.
Jeez.
Can't remember. But... yeah, I mean, it's and that's another argument. So you can shut up teams like that with the 8-team playoff. Is you throw UCF in there.
Fine, go in there then.
Right, exactly. So
put them in the salty spittoon real fast.
Salty spittoon, that's right.
All right, so the fourth and final segment of the show, I like to always end with NBA. One of your favorite players is taking the league by storm right now. 2 of your favorite players are taking the league by storm. Harden is tearing up the league, and he just single-handedly the other week put on a show in Oakland against the Warriors and then also beat the refs. So he's basically playing 8 guys because he's got the 5 and then he's got the 3 line judges or the refs. What is it about James Harden that is just so hard to cover? If you had to put it in one, couple words.
It's tough, and I don't know basketball well enough to fully answer that question, but I do think it's remarkable what he's doing, just because that guy gets a ton of hate.
Yeah, he does.
For what he's doing, the double step backs and whatnot. So
no defense.
No defense exactly. But he's putting that team on his back, and he's doing his darndest, and he's just one of those offensive players that he scores in a super unconventional way, and so it bugs people.
Yeah,
and he draws fouls, and what some people consider that it's not fancy, it's dirty, it doesn't look very good when you're watching him. You're watching him, and you're just going, this dude's been on the ground 10 times, and he's got 50 points. Yes. How does that happen? He scores in a super unconventional way, and he's the best at it in the league right now.
And that's not even a bad thing to say about the guy, because he's just really good at what he does. So. And also Giannis, the other guy who's taking the league by storm, he's just a freakish athlete. I wish I could tell you really more. The Bucks are not no pushover team. They're actually the best record in the NBA right now, right above Toronto and Denver. 28-11 are the Bucks right now. I really like the Bucks this year. They might walk out of the East, but I don't know with Kawhi and Toronto. But here's another thing I know. Not a lot of people need to know a lot about NBA for this discussion. And a lot of people, this is the discussion everyone wants to talk about in the NBA right now. And you look at Michael Jordan and you look at the 6-0 record. And I'm doing the good old LeBron versus Jordan right now. LeBron left Cleveland, right? And they were in the finals last year. you take Braun out of the equation, they are going to have the highest odds in the lottery pick next year, 25%.
Well, I tell you, I've got the records right in front of me, and the Cavaliers are nowhere to be found. They're so far down the list. So,
and that's alone just enough to be like, damn. When Michael Jordan left and went to the Wizards, they were 58 and whatever the remaining number is for the year.
Right.
The next year Michael Jordan leaves. The Bulls were
games.
55. They had 55 wins.
Yep.
I'm not saying Michael Jordan is a bad player. I don't want to hear the Michael Jordan birds. But I'm just saying that's a pretty big discussion to say that without LeBron on your team, you're suffering because the Lakers have lost 4 straight without LeBron.
Well, it's not like we're talking that the Cavs were a really bad team that just somehow luckily made it to the finals last year. They ran through the Celtics. They ran through the East, and they made it to the NBA Finals. It's like I feel like there's this assumption that, the Cavaliers were, just complete garbage except for LeBron last year. And maybe they were, but they still went to the finals.
They had to have some guy.
That's not just a little bit of a drop off.
Yeah.
That's not. You mentioned the 3-win difference when Jordan left the Bulls, and we're not even talking a 10 or 15 win difference. We're talking 40 or 50.
Yes.
Man. And that's just it. That's all you need to know
it's
there.
Insanity
for the Braun versus Jordan debate, if you ask me.
So, if I were to ask you right now, because I know you're starting to learn basketball a lot better, who would you build your team around right now? You get to say, you get 2 players.
Okay.
Who do you pick and why?
Well, I'm probably I'll restrict it to really young guys, rookies probably. I really like what the Mavs are doing.
Yeah.
And I think,
Doncic or
and
Doncic.
he's, we laugh a little bit because the NBA loves him.
Yes,
and they like to showcase his talent a lot, but it doesn't take away from what he's doing.
Yeah.
And it's not all that surprising when you look at how he played in the EuroLeague, and I think it was a little bit surprising to me, just as a more casual NBA fan, that the few teams that did pass on him. It's like this guy. There's not a whole lot of risk with this guy, and he's showing right now how that's doing. But at the same time, they've got Dennis Smith down there. Dirk's kind of watching over everybody. Uncle Dirk, and so I like what the Mavs are doing. I really like they could build that team around those Dennis Smith and Luka and those young guys.
That's a really good.
I'm trying to think what my second would be. I do also think it's a lot slower process, but I like what the Suns are doing, and they're in Booker and Ayton, and we kind of talked about that. Really, really good centers are just super rare coming out of college, and
a true 5.
Ayton's growing. He's got some growing pains, but he's quietly been balling right now, and nobody's really talking about it. And for just about every other number 1 pick, they would be. But with him and Booker, I think the Suns have a bright future too. So.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to build anything, I'd put Ayton as a true 5, and then honestly, you plug in a guard like Dennis Smith, a guard like Mike Conley, that's a good team. And so that's probably who I would build around. Ayton would be a very good piece to build around in the league right now. But before we go, I want to get one more hot take out of you, and this is my hot take of the NBA. Boston has been known to have a good sports team in everything possible. Don't even get me started. Even in the WWE, John Cena is from Boston, and he's the best wrestler, arguably, ever. Dominant. People can't even see the guy, Thomas.
You're right.
You're right. Boston has had the Red Sox, they've had the Bruins, they've had New England, and now they have the Boston Celtics with Kyrie Irving, Gordon Hayward, Al Horford, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. Baines is even in the conversation. Scary Terry, and where are the Boston Celtics on the leading standings of the NBA?
Oof, I have to count.
I can't even see them in the top 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. What is that? 12 teams we have on here.
That you got to count.
The fact that I have to count with the roster that I can name 7 guys off the top of my head is an absolute terror of a team for Boston. They have no excuse to be bad. They have Kyrie Irving, who alone could make your team very great. Gordon Hayward, Al Horford, one of the better true 4s or 5s in the league, and a fantastic bench and a young coach. What the fuck, man? You know,
they should be ashamed of themselves.
I don't get it.
They really should. And great coach, throw that in there
great
too.
Coach.
You know, and
great fans. Great arena.
Boston, all I can say is that this is Boston fans. This is what you deserve. And I'm looking at Brock right now. I'm looking at some Boston fans. I know this is what you deserve, okay? Because the Red Sox, the Patriots, John Cena, okay? You know, you've never known loss in any of your sports teams. And the problem is the Celtics are probably only going to get better with what they've got. And
They're probably going to go to the playoffs,
get Zion anyway. But
if they get Zion, I will eat this piece of paper. If the Celtics get Zion Williamson, I will eat this piece of paper. To end the show, I know you're a big guy. You're a big Warriors guy because of Klay Thompson being from WSU, and I'm pretty sure other reasons, obviously. But I know you get as mad as any other Warriors fan would when you see the Warriors goofing around in the regular season. What is your take on the Warriors and being children in the regular season?
Well, pretty soon, maybe this year, it's going to bite them in the ass eventually. Hard to say how hard it's going to bite them in the ass, but it's going to happen because I remember talking to you after the Christmas game.
Yeah.
And the Warriors, to me, and this may seem like an obvious take, but the Warriors, to me, look like a team with 4 All-Stars who don't practice. They don't practice every day. It's like the professional sports team, and they just just shoot around is what it is. They play bump or something. That's what it looks like.
Pig.
That's what it looks like they do. It's Kevin Durant's playing pig on one side of the court with his little clique, and then Draymond Green is on the other side bullying people because they're fighting each other right now. But Boogie Cousins is coming back, and
the death lineup
whatever.
Is
but
soon to be.
They do. They look like a team that doesn't practice, and sooner rather than later, everybody talks about the switch, the proverbial switch. They're gonna move. They're gonna figure it out, and they're gonna run the whole league. And they could do that again this year.
They could,
but they are looking pretty bad right now, as in terms of their Warriors dynasty.
Yes.
They are.
In terms of the 73-9. So that about does it for the Weekly Take podcast this week. Thanks, you guys, for joining. Thomas, where could people find you one last time just before we end the show? Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, Thomas Lindgren 7. Check me out. Give this guy a follow, man. He's a big sports fan, and even bigger Wazoo fan. Thanks so fucking much, guys, for listening to this show, and everyone have a fantastic day. This has been Weekly Take.